Hey, what's up YouTube? This is We All Juggle Knives and you are at another Multi-Tool Monday. Today we're going to discuss the Skeletool. That's the one in the center. Where does the Skeletool fit in Leatherman's product line? Which model, if any, should you get? Is it cost effective? You know, with multi-tools, there are two different design approaches, two different purchasing approaches. There's what you could call the toolbox approach, and then there is the minimalist approach, exemplified by the Skeletool. Now, the toolbox philosophy is basically trying to put every possible tool on a multi-tool, so it's basically a miniature toolbox in your pocket, right? And I can think of no better example than this Leatherman Surge. Now, the toolbox approach is actually quite popular. The Leatherman Surge is one of the most beloved Leatherman models. The Skeletool, however, represents the other philosophy, which is the minimalist tool set, minimalism. Basically, all of what you need and none of what you don't need. Now, often these philosophies are seen as opposites, but that's not necessarily true. They can be complementary. I know many people who have the Surge and, they carry that toolbox tool when they think they're going to need all those tools. And for other occasions, when they don't think they're going to need that much, they'll carry a more minimal tool. Sometimes it's the Sidekick, but it could well be the Skeletool. So that was all just to orient us as far as what category this fits into. You know, if you try to judge this multi-tool by the standards of a whole different category or type, well then of course it's not going to fulfill those standards because it's not meant to. This is their minimalist offering. So what does this have? Well, it has a carabiner, which is also the bottle opener. It's got a blade that is one-handed opening. It's got the pliers, of course. The blade locks too. It's a liner lock, as you see. And it's got the pliers with the close gripping portion, the wider gripping portion, and the wire cutters. And they're not replaceable, like on the Surge. And it has the bit driver with a reversible bit. And there's also storage for another bit on here. You see that? So you get basically 4 drivers with the tool. Now, as I said, this comes with 2 double-ended bits. But I bought a package deal where I got the extender and all those other double-ended bits, because those will work with all my other Leathermans too that have the driver, and I didn't have the whole set, so I just got that. So I'll include a link if you want to buy the package deal. The blade is quite sharp. I would give it an A-, which is a very respectable level of sharpness, especially for a blade on a multi-tool. You see how they've done the blade with a very high bevel there. It's a sheep's foot style blade. Now, it's not quite as sharp as, like, for example, this full flat ground Spyderco, or what you would get on a Victorinox knife. You know, these are just thinner blades. But as I said, it still has very respectable initial sharpness. Now, one thing I want to point out about this blade, and the reason that I'm spending a little extra time just talking about the blade, is because for the Skeletool, I think that they're marketing this as a replacement for a folding knife. You know, most multi-tools, the blade on most multi-tools is basically seen as a backup. In other words, most people who carry a multi-tool also carry a dedicated folding knife. But this is actually kind of marketed to, like, integrate the blade into the tool. So a lot of people who carry the Skeletool actually do not carry a folding knife with it. So the blade on this is a lot more important than on most multi-tools, and they've done a good job. I mean, well, if you're right-handed, you know, it's easy to open. I'm actually left-handed, so I don't care that much, but if you're right-handed, you know, this is as easy to open as your Spyderco or your Benchmade folder. Now there are 3 different versions of the Skeletool. This is the CX. It has a plain edge blade of 154 cm steel. There is also the RX, which is the rescue version, which has a fully serrated blade of 154 cm steel. And then there is the basic model Skeletool, which has a combo edge blade of 420 HC steel. So the main difference between the 3 models is the steel and the type of edge. Now, which one should you get? Well, the other big difference is the price. You can buy 2 of the regular model for the cost of this model. And this model also has a carbon fiber handle scale, but mainly it's all about that steel. So which one should you get? Do not be afraid to get the normal model. If you're going for the most value and the most use for your dollars, I would recommend the regular model. Now, if you really, really hate combo edge, okay, maybe get this model, but like I said, this is twice the price. Now, I got this one because I love using multi-tools, but I also collect knives, and you know, there's that part of me that wants the nicest one. But honestly, don't be afraid to get the regular model, especially if you're on a tight budget. You're not going to be missing out on any huge amount of performance. Yes, it's true that 154 cm is often seen as a more desirable steel. However, you know, this is a folding knife. It's not a fixed blade knife. I'm not going to beat the crap out of it. You know, I'm not going to cut up 200 boxes in a warehouse with my multi-tool blade. I would use a box cutter. So most people are using this as a folding knife replacement multi-tool. Most people day to day for mundane cutting tasks, you're not really going to notice that much of a difference, so you're not going to be missing out. You know, the regular model of the Skeletool is now the same price on Amazon as the Leatherman Sidekick. All right, both around $40. Now the Sidekick has the wood saw, but a lot of people don't need the wood saw, so definitely, if you're on a budget, consider the regular model of the Skeletool. So one of the biggest questions with any minimalist tool set is, have they gone too far? Does this have enough tools? Like even for a minimalist tool set, you know, it's got the blade, the pliers, and the bit driver. Well, pliers are the central tool of a multi-tool. I mean, most multi-tools are plier based, and for good reason. So I'm not going to argue with the inclusion of the pliers, of course. And as we said, this is conceptualized as a folding knife replacement. So they did give you a really good locking blade with nice steel and good sharpness, and a useful blade shape. It's got some slicing ability, some piercing, and some draw cutting. So they did really good with the blade. The bit driver as well, quite useful. So they did a really nice job with all the major tools in this, and that's important because, you know, when you have a multi-tool with like 50 different tools on it, if a couple of them aren't that good, it's not a deal breaker. But when you have a minimalist tool set with such a small number of tools to begin with, every tool has to be of high quality. So have they achieved that? Yes, they have. They have achieved that, and that's why Leatherman is very highly regarded. Now, as far as how I would change the tool set or what I would add in my perfect dream world, well, I for one would like to see the carabiner part replaced with a hammer surface like they have on the Signal. You know, if they're going to make it extra long anyway. Now, I realize this is not a very heavy multi-tool. Okay, so you're not going to be driving railroad stakes through concrete with it, but there are many times where even a small little light hammer surface can just be useful. You know, to me that's more useful than the swing gate carabiner and the bottle opener. I also would like if they could find a way to add some scissors to this multi-tool. Pliers, scissors, hammer, screwdrivers, and blade. To me, that would be the ultimate minimalist tool set. So Leatherman, please make that for me. I'll thank you in advance. I know you're going to do it. Now, because this is seen as often as a replacement for a folder, they give you some other ways to carry it besides a pouch. Right? They give you a pocket clip there, and they give you the carabiner. Now this carabiner extension and bottle opener, this is probably the most controversial feature of this, because as you notice, it does add to the length of this tool. It takes up a lot of space, just makes it a bit more bulky. You know, I could take it or leave it. I don't think it makes it a no-go. I mean, I don't think it ruins the tool at all, but I don't think it adds a huge amount either. I don't know if there's anybody who buys it, you know, for the carabiner part. And in general, you know, I do think this is one of the most practical of Leatherman's tools. I mean, thin, easy to carry, and pliers, a good knife, and a screwdriver. There are many times where that really is all you need. So overall, who should buy this, or should anyone buy this? If you already have like a toolbox style multi-tool that basically has everything, it would be good to get this one version or another, because there are some times where you just don't want to carry, you know, the biggest and baddest and thickest, you know, just for short trips where you know that you're not going to have to like rebuild the space shuttle or something, but you might need to cut something, you might need a screwdriver, you might need some pliers. And as I said, if you don't want to carry a separate knife, but you do want a cutting tool, this is very good for that. I mean, I know a lot of people who, they have to go places where it's just not acceptable for them to carry a separate knife, but a pair of pliers that happens to have a knife on it is seen as a lot more people friendly. So if you're in that situation, this is good. And as I said, the regular model of this is only $40. That is a very good deal for what you get. So if you're in the budget-minded preparedness category, definitely consider that basic model. So yeah, there are, you know, those three major groups of people could all benefit from this multi-tool. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, I actually do recommend it for many different types of people. Now, if you want to pick up a Skeletool, I will include a link. It's going to be a group link. It's an integrated link. So it's just one single link, but when you click on it, it will show you all the different types of Skeletool that are on Amazon. So final thoughts on this Skeletool design. Well, you know, I'll admit that I come more from the toolbox school of thought, as many people do, because when you're growing up and you first see like a Swiss Army knife or your first multi-tool, you know, you always have the attitude of, oh man, it has every single tool, and that's what you want. But as I have grown older and more experienced, I do see the value in carrying only what you need and none of what you don't. So over time, I have come around more closely to the minimalist mindset, and I still like the toolbox stuff. I mean, I still like my Leatherman Surge, but I can definitely now see where this fits in. So yeah, I do recommend this. It is an awesome multi-tool. Hope you enjoyed seeing it. This has been We All Juggle Knives and Multi-Tools. I'm out.